If you had to choose between being loved and being authentic, which would you choose? This seems like a simple question, but think about it. How many times have you hidden what you really think, changed your behavior, or repressed your feelings just to be accepted? How many times have you felt trapped in a role, trying to please others while deep down, something inside you was screaming for freedom? The truth is that the desire to be loved is one of the most powerful forces guiding our lives. From childhood, we learn that acceptance from others brings us security, affection, and belonging. But what happens when this desire conflicts with who we really are? Could it be that in seeking the love of others, we end up distancing ourselves from ourselves? Philosophy, psychology, and even biology can help us understand this dilemma. And today, we're going to explore the consequences of seeking approval at any cost and the risks and benefits of choosing authenticity. So tell me, have you ever felt like you had to choose between being accepted and being yourself? Comment below, because your story may help others to reflect on this. Now let's dive into this dilemma and find out if there is a way to be loved while still being who you are. Since the dawn of humanity, the desire to be accepted has been a fundamental need. In cave times, being rejected meant death. Without a group, an individual couldn't hunt, protect themselves, or survive. And although today we no longer need a tribe to guarantee our physical survival, our brains still function as if we did. Neuroscience confirms this. When we are rejected, the brain activates the same areas that process physical pain. A study by the University of California showed that being excluded activates the anterior cingulate cortex, the same region that makes us feel pain when we hurt ourselves. This explains why rejection hurts so much and why we seek approval almost instinctively. In childhood, we quickly learn that certain behaviors bring us love and attention. If a child realizes that their parents only show them affection when they get good grades or behave in a certain way, they begin to associate acceptance with performance. Over time, this search for approval extends to other aspects of life: work, friendships, relationships. We create versions of ourselves that fit in with what others expect. The problem is that this need can lead us into a dangerous cycle. When our identity is based solely on external acceptance, we become hostage to other people's opinions. We start asking ourselves, what will others think, before we even think about what we really want. On social media, this is even more evident. How many times have you deleted a post because it didn't get enough likes, or felt bad because you didn't get the same approval as someone else? Modern society has amplified this need for validation, making it a silent addiction. If being accepted by others brings so much security, why do we still feel an emptiness when we try to please everyone? The answer lies in what we leave behind when we seek approval, our authenticity. From an early age, we learn that some versions of ourselves are more acceptable than others. When a child expresses an opinion that differs from the majority and is ridiculed, they learn to silence their voice. When a teenager feels they need to change their personality to fit in with the group, they begin to disconnect from their essence. And when an adult spends years trying to meet the expectations of others, they may look in the mirror and not recognize who they really are. The price of acceptance can be high. We often sacrifice our true desires. How many people choose careers not because they love them, but because they want their parents' or society's approval? Our values. In order to be accepted, we sometimes pretend to agree with ideas that don't make sense to us. Our peace of mind, the pressure to be perfect and meet external expectations, can lead to anxiety, depression, and a deep sense of dissatisfaction. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology showed that people who base their self-esteem on the acceptance of others are more likely to suffer from anxiety and emotional exhaustion. They live in a constant state of alert, worried about maintaining an image that doesn't always correspond to reality. And ironically, the more we try to please, the less authentic we become, and the fewer genuine connections we create. After all, if people love an edited version of us, they're not really loving us. but the mask we're wearing. So what's the limit? To what extent is it worth changing to be accepted? Is it simply doing what you want without worrying about others? Or is there a balance between expressing who we are and maintaining healthy connections? Authenticity is not about rebellion or selfishness. It's about living in coherence with your real values, desires, and emotions. It's about acting according to what you believe without the constant need for external approval. Carl Jung, one of the great names in psychology, said that true individuation happens when we integrate all parts of ourselves without suppressing what makes us unique. But why is it so difficult to be authentic? Society conditions us to believe that some versions of ourselves are more acceptable than others. Since we were children, we have been given signals about what we should feel and how we should act in order to be accepted. Over time, we mold ourselves to these standards until, at some point, we no longer know if we are acting out of choice or out of fear of rejection. Being authentic takes courage. It means risking rejection, questioning norms, and above all, getting to know yourself deeply. Authenticity is not a fixed label, but a constant process of discovery and alignment between what we think, feel, and do. However, authenticity comes at a price. Often, when we show our true essence, we realize that some people won't accept who we really are. And that can be frightening. After all, we spend our lives believing that we need to please in order to be accepted. But what happens when we choose to stop pretending? The first major barrier to authenticity is the fear of rejection. As we discussed earlier, our brains associate social exclusion with real pain. So when we decide to be ourselves, we may face stares, criticism, or even alienation from people who were used to the edited version of us. This is because many relationships are based on convenience and expectations, not genuine connection. When we fail to meet the expectations of others, some people may get upset. Perhaps friends move away because we no longer like the same things. Perhaps family members judge us because we follow a different path. But here's the hard, liberating truth. If someone walks away because you're authentic, they've never really been there for you. Think about it. Is it worth maintaining relationships where you have to diminish yourself or mold yourself in order to be accepted? Would you rather be loved for who you are not or be respected for who you really are? Historical figures and authentic influences have often faced criticism and rejection. Nietzsche, for example, was rejected by his time for questioning traditional values, but his ideas transformed generations. Authentic people annoy because they break standards, challenge norms, and above all, aren't afraid to be who they are. If being authentic can alienate some people, is living in isolation the only way forward? Or is there a middle ground between being true and still maintaining healthy connections? The good news is that we don't have to choose between being loved and being ourselves. The secret lies in learning to express our authenticity without aggression and without the need for approval. Here are 3 essential principles for finding that balance. 1. Practice authenticity intelligently. Being authentic doesn't mean saying everything that goes through your head without filters. There's a big difference between being truthful and being brutally honest in a destructive way. The key is to know when and how to express your opinions and emotions, respecting the limits of others without canceling yourself out. 2. Choose the right people to be by your side. Not everyone will accept your true essence, and that's fine. But that doesn't mean you have to isolate yourself. On the contrary, by abandoning masks and being genuine, you attract people who really connect with who you are. Authentic relationships are based on compatibility, not on constantly striving to please. 3. Don't confuse acceptance with emotional dependence. The problem isn't wanting to be loved. That's natural and healthy. The problem arises when the need for approval becomes greater than the need to be yourself. True emotional freedom happens when you realize that even if some people don't approve of your choices, you are still enough. Being authentic doesn't mean giving up on love, but rather seeking a love that accepts your essence. What happens when we spend our lives trying to please others and ignore our authenticity? It may seem like a safe path in the short term, but in the long term, it comes at a high and often irreversible Cost. Many people spend decades playing roles, living up to the expectations of others, only to look back one day and realize that they never really lived. The result? Anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, and a suffocating feeling of emptiness. According to a study published in the Journal of Research in Personality, people who repress their authenticity are more likely to develop mood disorders and emotional exhaustion. This is because living a life that doesn't reflect who you really are generates constant internal conflict. Here are 3 signs that you may be ignoring this dilemma and sacrificing your authenticity. 1. You feel you need to hide parts of who you are. If you constantly censor your opinions, emotions, and desires, you may be living more to please others than to be yourself. This creates an internal disconnect which, over time, turns into chronic dissatisfaction. 2. You feel emotionally exhausted. Living a life based on external acceptance requires constant effort, measuring words, analyzing reactions, avoiding conflicts. This exhaustion can lead to intense mental fatigue and even physical symptoms such as insomnia and frequent headaches. 3. You're afraid of being alone. If the idea of losing people's approval causes a paralyzing panic, it's possible that your identity is based on what others think, and not on what you really feel. Healthy relationships should not be built at the expense of your true essence. The biggest risk of ignoring this dilemma is not just losing superficial connections, it's losing the connection with yourself. After everything we've explored, it's now time for a choice. Do you want to be loved by others, or do you want to be true to yourself? This question may seem simple, but it carries one of the deepest dilemmas of human existence. From an early age, we learn that being accepted gives us security. We want to be included, valued, and loved. The problem is that this acceptance often comes at a high price, the sacrifice of our authenticity. And this is a price that many people pay without even realizing it. They spend years, even decades, shaping their words, actions, and even their dreams to fit in with other people's expectations. And in the end, they look at themselves and ask themselves, who am I really? The great truth is that no external love can fill the void of someone who has lost connection with themselves. You can be the most popular in your circle, you can be admired, you can earn respect and recognition, but if at the end of the day you look in the mirror and don't see your true essence, then what was it all worth? The choice between being loved and being authentic may seem cruel, but it doesn't have to be a path of extremes. The key is not to reject the love of others, but to seek a love that accepts your essence, not just the edited version of who you are. The central question is, does the person who truly loves you love who you really are or just what you pretend to be? And if the answer is that some people around you only accept you while you follow a script, then maybe it's time to reconsider which relationships are really worth maintaining. Life is too short to be lived according to external expectations. The greatest freedom you can experience is not needing to please anyone in order to feel complete. Now think, what would your life be like if you weren't afraid of other people's judgment? If you didn't have to prune yourself, hide yourself, repress yourself? Imagine waking up every day without having to carry the weight of being someone you're not. That's authenticity. That's peace. But I know it's not easy. The fear of rejection is real. The risk of losing some connections is there. However, the question that needs to be asked is, were those connections real in the first place? Relationships based on false versions of ourselves are not genuine connections. They are just silent agreements of convenience. When you start being authentic, some people leave, and that's okay, because the ones who stay will be the ones who truly accept you. If you want to take a step towards this freedom, here's a simple but powerful exercise. Take a piece of paper and write down 3 things. 3 desires or dreams you've always had but never followed for fear of other people's judgment. 3 opinions that you hide or soften to avoid conflict or rejection. 3 moments in your life when you felt completely authentic, without masks, without fear. Now look at these answers and ask yourself, what's stopping me from living more in line with this? What do I really need to be who I am without fear? The first step towards authenticity is awareness, and you've already taken that step now. In the end, the choice will always be yours. You can continue to seek external acceptance, trying to fit into patterns that don't always make sense to you. Or you can choose to respect yourself, value yourself, and become someone who doesn't need the approval of others to feel complete. And now I want to know, have you ever sacrificed your authenticity in order to be accepted? What was your experience like? Leave your comment below. Your story could inspire others to find their true essence. Let's create a space for reflection and growth together. If this video made sense to you, if it helped you rethink your life and see your authenticity more clearly, I invite you to support this channel. Click on the Thanks a Lot button and help this message go further, reach more people, and allow me to continue bringing deep, well-researched and transformative content to you. Your support makes all the difference. And remember, being loved by others may bring comfort, but being loved by yourself brings freedom. See you in the next video.